Welcome to World of Monsters versus, where you choose two monsters of any sort and find out who the victor will be in a battle, a full-out combat showdown, no limits! For everything monster, don't forget to subscribe. Now here's your host, Monster Master Arthur!
Greetings, monster fans, and welcome to today's monster showdown between these two most voted upon powerful monstrous anti-heroes. Out of the depths of hell, we have Spawn, and from the abyss of outer space comes Venom. Who do you have your gold or Bitcoin on as the winner? Before the final battle, let's first go over each warrior and their abilities. We want everything out in the open, no cheating, unless that's their skill. Al Simmons was an extremely well-versed and respected man of the governmental institutes, having first really pushed his career in the US Marine Force, after which he further expanded on his abilities in the Secret Service and CIA. At home, he was happily married to his lovely wife Wanda, until one day he was blown away to hell. Literally. This is where he made a deal to become a Hellspawn with Malbogia, one of Hell's rulers, if he could see his wife for one last time. Having returned to Earth, Spawn soon realizes that he'd been away, dead, for 5 years. In addition, having lost most recollection of his wife, Spawn, Al, feels betrayed by the demon and vows not to serve the fiery end, and instead finds himself with a new purpose, full of a wide scope of adventures. With that, let's get to the details.
Strengths!
Having had extensive training in hand-to-hand, close and ranged combat, Simmons is able to utilize himself, anything around him, and most weapons expertly. Among the many martial arts he is skilled at are Jiu-Jitsu, Jeet Kune Do, Muay Thai, Judo, and Karate. Being physically strong as a human weighing at over 200 pounds was nothing compared to his now fires of hell imbued strength, speed, and insane durability. Not just a force of calamity, he was educated, learned beyond the ways of combat. He was a traveled man who can speak 10 languages fluently, and onward to the next level of his strengths. I already mentioned his hellishly improved natural abilities, but it goes far beyond what we usually imagine as superhuman. For you see, if he so desires, he can move faster than the eye can perceive. Being composed of necroplasm, or what would more easily be described as green hell magic, Spawn can change his composition to be dense and heavy enough to completely stop and destroy a car traveling at 70 miles per hour, which did once happen. Or he can become so light, so materially thin as to become a phantom, passing through the walls as if they were mere spiderwebs. Spawn does have organs, which is theorized that he so kept as part of his memory bank, but they're neither a negative nor a positive, as he can regrow them at will. That said, he can replace entire limbs and heal the gnarliest of cuts practically anywhere on his body. Feeding off the necroplasm and surrounding evil is perhaps Spawn's most notable expression of power. His uniform and cape. The suit itself boasts chains that can lash out at any moment and decapitate a foe, even if Spawn isn't fully conscious. It can form blades, spikes, hooks, armor, as well as adapt his form to whatever best suits his motive and surrounding. The whole ensemble, along with the cape, act much like the symbiote of Venom, being practically a living thing of its own, ready to strike at a victim or aid him in flight. Having mentioned his ability to change form, this in fact is so advanced that it is utter shape shifting, as he can take the form of a completely different person and even sex. Back to the mental aspect, Spawn is able to pick up things out of reach and use them to his advantage, such as weapons. This ability seems not to be as prominently used, hence we can conclude it as being moderate in skill level. He can read thoughts, and along this same line, can also use his mind to control animals into serving him, particularly predators, as those are considered to be more evil. And if these animals aren't present, he can always summon his bat-like minions known as Creatures of the Black, as well as his own army of undead. And with this, it appears that we have arrived at yet another tier of power. Magic, the vast magical capabilities the powers of the necroplasm have granted upon him, and what variety we have here. He can fire energy blasts, form necroplasmic weaponry, transmute matter, cure the ill, resurrect the dead, and breathe and manipulate fire. Spawn can teleport, stop time, create portals to heaven and hell. He has superhuman level perception, able to go invisible, and can rejuvenate himself and do power-ups via absorbing the evilness of others. To a good degree, he has control over nature, such as forests and Earth's elements. And finally, his souls. Within this rebel of the rulers of good and evil were thousands of souls that he could recruit as Hellspawn when needed, but they diminished over time as they ascended or got destroyed in battle. Of those whom ascended, their knowledge and experience remain with him. And finally, as you comic Spawn fans know, he has a necroplasmic energy / power supply that is measured full at 9999, and so anytime he exerts himself, this number drains. But as the story goes, eventually he hit rock bottom and fought his way out to the point where he is no longer constricted by these levels. With this transcendence and eventual enlightenment to a cosmic awareness, Simmons can barely be regarded as human anymore, or even a Hellspawn. But is it all good and mighty?
Weaknesses.
Spawn can manipulate his form and change to look like anyone but his former self. A small con, but a curse nonetheless. Spawn's extrasensory ability allows him to figure out what happened at crime scenes, but there is a negative to this awareness. He can feel the desolation and agony in the living world around him. Certainly not the worst weakness, but over time, definitely torturous to a good degree. Green World is a dimension equal in power to heaven and hell, within which Spawn's abilities are lessened in their potential as he is constantly haunted by his past. Also, the Dead's Zone is a small portion in the domain of heaven that is governed by the laws of Green World, rendering Spawn extra-human powerless when present. But not all is bad for Simmons here, as Green World allowed him to regain his memories, as well as even resurrected him once upon a time. It also provided him power over the Earth in order to defeat Urizen, a great deity that had existed before all we know. Therefore, this one cancels itself out. Weapons of heaven or great magical endowment are the only few things that can seriously damage or even kill Spawn. And therefore, it's nigh time we fill the board with our buddy Venom's powers and flaws. Venom initially was an alien originating from the planet Clintar, from where he was exiled as a sort of outcast in its ways. Being a parasitical creature amorphous in form, there was a rather strange path in how it found its way into Spider-Man's hands. Basically, a very advanced machine materialized it, or more so teleported it, forth when Spider-Man used it to get a new suit. All in all, the symbiote and Spider-Man didn't hit it off, and the alien again felt rejected with a great disliking for the web slinger. It crawled and oozed about until it found Eddie Brock, an ex-reporter that had lost his job due to Peter Parker, Spider-Man, exposing a mistake he had made, discovering more favorable personality tropes and a mutual hatred for Spider-Man. The symbiote enthusiastically bonded with Eddie. Onto Eddie's existing great athleticism, the parasite added what its DNA learned of Spider-Man and his abilities to create the singular, powerful duo, Venom. And yes, the symbiote later moved on to other hosts as well as back and forth with Eddie Brock, but this is still the most notable team-up, so that's who will be facing Spawn today.
Strengths.
At the impressive stature of 6'3" and 260 pounds, Eddie Brock was a competitive bodybuilder. This inflated by the symbiote created for a beast able to lift, literally, tons of mass. The living costume can create virtually any imaginable shape, which includes any that can particularly be dangerous to a foe, such as blades, spikes, or it can simply use its gooey tendrils to pop off the heads off of evil. And as you will notice, with more and more similarities to Spawn and his suit, the symbiote can form into protective casts, like shields and walls. Due to the Clintarian having the ability of retaining much of its previous host, such as their memories, but more importantly for combat, their skills and abilities, Venom is not just stronger, but now much, much faster, since Spider-Man was already physically superior to any human. Therefore, the symbiote's ability to expand on these properties means that Venom isn't just faster and stronger than Spider-Man, but Spidey's other abilities such as vertical surface mobility and web slinging got an improvement, although the spider senses started off a little weak. This is an enormous advantage, as the symbiote can explore as many hosts as being able to bond with, and return to Eddie with a whole heap of new features. The alien can shapeshift and change its colors from the basic necessity level of providing regular looking clothes for Eddie to, like again with Spawn, completely transforming his appearance to someone else, to rendering him invisible via extreme camouflage. I did say the symbiote can create simple shapes such as
knives and stabbing weapons,
but it can also morph into complex organic forms such as extra limbs, like legs as it did for Eugene or Flash Thompson as Agent Venom. More recently, it surprisingly went beyond gliding webs and evolved a complete set of wings to carry Eddie with. Also, whether it being due to forming additional organs or some way of storing oxygen, Venom can remain underwater and even space for prolonged periods of time. And go figure, with these adaptive abilities, night vision. The symbiote can also split portions of itself and have them attached to objects and beings for tracking, akin to what was hinted with the T-1000 in Terminator 2. Although these are bits of the creature that would benefit in returning, the symbiote is also asexual, meaning that it requires no partner for reproduction and can leave spores about that can develop into fully fledged symbiotes in search of their own hosts, such as in Carnage's case. Ever wondered why you never see Venom take a restroom break? Of course you haven't. That's the secret behind that dazzling green saliva. But not only is it a convenient way for him to excrete on the go, eventually it and his blood became toxic enough to make it on this list of strengths. The connection between host and symbiote is so close, so strong, that it can actually manipulate the chemistry and mind of the host. What an answer to depression. Of course, what it'll do depends on their relationship, but this can get involved enough to the point of possession. On a lighter note, the symbiote can regenerate and cure illnesses. And all this, not to mention with fragments of itself. Although when Eddie did get cancer, the alien could resist its effects, but not destroy it. The assimilation process can be a powerful weapon, and even though there is a wide variety of beings and even machines, such as cars, that the symbiote can bond with at least enough to mobilize, the success also depends on the level of resistance the victim can employ. Venom is also very agile, tough, and this, along with pretty much everything else mentioned, can be boosted if the emotions and feelings of the alien and host are in sync. This means that he can grow in size, but if need be, the symbiote can compress itself enough to get into tiny places and to even, believe it or not, travel through electrical cables / internet, as he did when tracking and taunting Carnage. Take this one as you will. Anyway, you can imagine the implications of being able to enter small orifices within which it can then expand. With even more mutual focus between the two, huge hurdles can be overcome, such as the frailty before fire. This is shorter lived, but could be a deciding dynamic between life and death. Perhaps the best feature of the symbiote's biology, although one to be expected at this point, is its ability to mutate and evolve a resistance to whatever weaknesses it and its host may have. This takes time, but the longer the Clintarian struggles forward, the more resilient it becomes. This obscure alien is indeed mysterious and also possesses the ability to create some sort of pockets out of nowhere to hold things in a way that won't impede or reveal anything. The great thing about Venom really is the duo itself, as they can separate at any time. These are two beings that fully function independently. The symbiote can even morph into humanoid form at this point without the need of anyone, albeit for only up to 12 hours. Beyond the biological traits of Venom, we also know that he does not trigger Peter Parker's spider senses and is unaffected by Ghost Rider's penance stare that can leave a person destroyed depending on how much evil they have done in their entire past. This is an interesting tidbit, as it could play a factor somewhere within an encounter with Spawn. In addition, Venom does also exercise a medium level of telepathic resistance, and if you think he's not the brightest, the symbiote most likely retained the privilege of tuning into the voice of the cosmos, since its adventures with Flash. This is a universal voice that helps guide and can sense when not only the perceiver is in danger, but when others are as well. This is an even greater benefactor than the Clintar hive mind, which is also limited by distance.
Weaknesses.
This is not just a blemish of Venoms, but of all the Clintar. During their creation, to keep things interesting, Null, their creator, sprinkled a tad too many drops of catecholamines into the mix. Catecholamines are chemicals released in your brain that give you a boost of energy when angry. Therefore, all symbiotes have this curse of bloodlust, and while in battle it could be a positive, it can also overwhelm strategic and rational thinking, resulting in bad decisions and moves and broken strategies. Adding another point to their hereditary imperfections is the need for the host to release adrenaline, as this is what the Clintar feed on. This also brings us to Venom requiring sustenance through the consumption of brains and chocolate. The nourishment within these being a chemical known as phenylethylamine. Phenylethylamine is an organic compound, natural monoamine, alkaloid, and trace amine, which acts as a central nervous system stimulant in humans. Not a major con, but surely an annoying one. Then there are the more commonly known weaknesses of fire and high frequency noise, although their effectiveness really depends on what point in Venom's timeline we look at. For this battle, they will certainly be considered as bad elements against him, but at a medium level rather than high, as we'd seen with early Venom. Possibly electricity, which makes sense, though is part of a side canon within the Spider-Man Ultimate universe. Either way, I'd treat this as a lower negative. The web shooting itself, as it's a major tool of use, but is limited in amount as it's composed of the symbiote's mass. Not a biggie, but something to keep in mind. And as for secondary or indirect weaknesses, we have a predatory race to the Clintar called poisons, which seek them out to bond with and infect. Also, xenophages, an insectoid-type race that prey on symbiotes as well, have neurotoxic saliva that paralyzes these victims. And finally, the polar enemy to Venom, Anti-Venom, who may actually not even be as physically strong, but whose symbiote is completely toxic to the Clintar, which it burns upon contact. What a matchup this is. I feel like the characters are so alike, yet one is superior in almost every way as far as its capabilities go. Beyond this statement, I don't see much of a reason to present an analysis on who I think would win, and anything can happen. But I would love to see your votes on this duel. Follow the link below, right under this video, and make your choice known. Spawn or Venom? I'm sure some of you would be on board with this, but why can't these two just be allies? I'd much rather see that. Come to think of it, Agent Venom would be an even better adversary for Spawn, as Flash Thompson has military/combat experience. Not as much as Simmons per se, but definitely more than ex-reporter Eddie had. But look, however great and powerful Venom is, he is not invincible. Spawn, on the other hand, is at a whole other level. He's practically achieved God status. In fact, he even sealed off God and Satan in a realm where they could forever battle one another. Spawn is only limited by his growing imagination, and there aren't many monsters you can say that about. What say you? Who do you think would be some great opponents for these Dark McFarlane creations with a tinge of green? Do you think Venom will eventually achieve deity status in the comic run? Who out of any monster out there would you like to see duke it out to the death? If you enjoy these over-the-top versus series, let me know. Join my Patreon for exclusivity and to stay up to date on what's to come. And remember, for everything monster, join the Force.
If you really haven't yet, be sure to subscribe down below, leave us a like if you're happy with the outcome of this battle, or let us know down below how you think it should have ended, or what you think should have happened. Check us out on all that social media stuff, links down below, and let us know who or what you would like to see battle down in the next episode of World of Monsters Versus.